Welcome to my China Adventures, episode number 7. So today I'm going to explain a little bit on how I got in contact with the underground church in China. As many of you know, China has a government church that is approved, that they have people that have to submit their sermons for government approval, etc. And then there is also the unregistered church that does not let the government know, and those meetings the government does not like. That is where you really find some dedicated believers. So I began to when I was in the U.S., began to meet different people that were involved, that were Chinese or had been to China and back. And one of them was a man named Randy that had spent several years in Beijing as a teacher, but also / missionary. And so he was kicked out of China, and he asked if I would go and check on the church that he had association with in Beijing. So I go to Beijing and I met with some of these folks, and just great folks. And the meeting place was so very, very interesting because it wasn't just an underground church, it was an underground hotel. So I went to this place, and there was all these buildings, and there was this door. You open the door, you go down one flight of steps into the basement, and then into another flight of steps into the basement, into musty rooms. Again, this was like low rent hotel. No windows, of course, because it's a couple levels below ground. Damp, moldy, and there we had some of the most awesome worship services. And exciting. I actually stayed there a night or two, and I survived fine. Very hospitable people, passionate worship, and that type of thing. But one young man that I met, really, really good English, and I asked him on a trip if he would be a translator to go from business to business. So we did, and it was so very interesting because we would stay in the hotel room, and in the same room, 2 different beds, and he would begin to ask me questions. Now, his father was the leader of an underground church denomination with about 10 million people. And he would come up with these very, very interesting questions, such as, do you believe that you can become a Christian without crying? I'm thinking, how weird of a question is that? Become a Christian without crying? But immediately, I felt the Lord gave me an answer. I said, well, what does the Bible say? Well, he said, well, I can't find it in the Bible. I said, well, why do you ask that question? I said, if it's not in the Bible, then it's not required. He says, yeah, but in our denomination, he says, that we have, if somebody is interested in becoming a Christian, we take them for a 3-day retreat. We explain everything to them, so that they know the cost, they know everything about it. And in the end, if they cry, we know they're sincere, and we deem them that they can get saved. I said, that's not in the Bible. We had many, many questions like that, whereby he would say, hey, what do you think about this? And I would always tell him, well, what's the Bible say? So here's a young man in his early 20s. He is groomed to become like a leader in the underground church. Very sharp young man, and he was seeing things that his group practiced that were not in the Bible. And he had these questions. And we had about a week of whereby he would ask me question after question after question to see if what he had an inkling about, or maybe was not comfortable with, or didn't see in the Bible, but was practiced by his group, was really true. So I always would point him back to the Bible. And in the end, he had a much clearer understanding of what things should be. And so I've lost track with him, and I think he is now in the Philippines. But an outstanding young man. Just had a great time with him. Here I was in my late 30s at that time. He was in his early 20s, and he was a up and coming leader, but he had questions. So the underground church, although they're very passionate, they had a lot of legalism. They had a lot of things that they, out of fear maybe, or out of their past experience, were practicing that were not scriptural. And so that's a good lesson for all of us to make sure that what we're doing, are we doing it out of our tradition? Or are we doing it out of our practice? Are we doing it because our group does that? Or is it really in God's word? And that's something we should always, always, always practice. So that was my introduction to the underground church. And I got a lot more interesting stories. So go ahead, click subscribe and the bell if you want to make sure that you don't miss some of those interesting stories. Take care.